On the posterior view, Karen displayed a asymmetrical shoulder height, where it could be a depressed right shoulder or a elevated left shoulder, and she also has a larger gap on the right side between her arm and the body. In sagittal view, she has a forward head posture as well as rounded shoulder, where both the humeral head as well as the external auditory meatus is not in line with the plumb line. Karen also displays slight kyphosis. At the anterior view, Karen's head is at the midline, however her right clavicle is slightly depressed than the left side. We tried to palpate for Karen's superior angle and inferior angle of her scapula, and as you can see, her right shoulder is downwardly rotated because her inferior angle and superior angle almost align. During dynamic scaption assessment, Karen showed a lack of external rotation on her left side during full scaption. We also know that she struck her shoulder during scaption. Her left scapula also posteriorly tilted during full scaption, as we can see more shadow. It is also important to note that she showed a full range of motion in scaption. Anteriorly, again, we can see that she does not want to externally rotate her left arm. Karen's shoulder also pop every single time she does scaption. Okay, hi. Today we're gonna do some dermatome testing. So can I have you close your eyes, please? I'm gonna touch two spots on your body. So let me know if they feel the same. Okay, so this is C5.
The same.
Okay, C6.
Does the same.
Okay, C7.
Does the same.
All right, C8.
Does the same.
All right, T1.
Does the same.
Okay, great. Okay, now we're gonna do some myotome testing. So I'm gonna put some pressure on you, so try to resist me. So first one is C5, elbow flexor. Try to resist me, please. 1, 2, 3. Okay, same thing for the other side. 1, 2, 3. All right, the next one is C6, wrist extensor. Can I have you extend your wrist for me, please, like this? Okay, resist me. 1, 2, 3. Same thing for the other side. 1, 2, 3. All right, the next one is C7 for elbow flexor. I'm gonna have you put your hand up like this and try to resist me. 1, 2, 3. Same thing. 1, 2, 3. All right, so next one is C8 for your finger flexor. I'm gonna have you curl up your fingers like this. All right, resist me. 1, 2, 3. Same thing for the other side. 1, 2, 3. All right, last one is T1 for finger abductor. I'm gonna have you put your fingers out like this, and I'm gonna press into your pinkies. All right, 1, 2, 3. Same thing for the other side. 1, 2, 3. Great.
Now we're performing the active range of motion for cervical and thoracic spine. So I'm gonna let the patient to sit on a chair for better stabilization of the pelvic and lumbar spine. And also I'm gonna want the patient to keep the chest upright to better isolate the cervical spine. And now we're performing the flexion and extension. So patient has a pretty good cervical flexion, but very little limited on the lower cervical spine extension. And after that, we're performing the cervical rotation. So I'm sitting in front of the patient. And let patient do the rotations. And she has a pretty good and full range of motion on both sides. Then the next one is the cervical side bending. This is on the left side, and this is on the right side. So I noticed that she has a pretty good on the left side bending, but little limit on the right side bending. Let's move on to the thoracic. And same, gonna let patient sit on the chair to stabilize the pelvic and the lumbar spine. So I'm gonna let patient isolate only the thoracic movement, and this one's for a flexion. And I will see the patient is within the functional limit for a flexion. And she has a limited thoracic extension because I saw a clear compensation on the lumbar spine. So let's move on to the thoracic rotation. And she has pretty good active range of motion for rotation, so I was documenting as within the functional limit. So now we're performing the passive range of motion for shoulder flexion and shoulder abductions. And for the video, I did wrong on the fulcrum and moment arm and stationary arm. And the actual fulcrum should be the lateral aspect of the greater trochanter. And the stationary arm should be parallel to the middle of axillary line of the thorax, and the moving arm is midline of the humerus toward lateral epicondyle. So I did wrong on this side, but the patient has a pretty good passive range of motion on the both side as we continue for the video. So her passive range of motion for shoulder flexion on both sides is 0 to 180 degrees. And now we're doing the shoulder abduction for both sides. So as we can see, she has a pretty good range of motions. And now we're starting to apply the goniometry. And now the fulcrum is the anterior aspect of acromion. And the stationary arm is parallel to the midline of anterior aspect of sternum. And the moving arm is anterior midline of the humerus toward the medial epicondyle. So she has a pretty good range of motion, and is documented as for her shoulder abduction for both sides, the passive range of motion is 0 to 180 degrees, which is normal. Now we're performing the goniometry for passive range of motion of the shoulders, external internal rotations. So first we're gonna do the shoulder internal rotations, and we align the fulcrum, moment arm, and the stationary arm. For her right shoulder internal rotation, her passive range of motion is 0 to 76 degrees. And now we're just recording the numbers. And for the efficiency, I'm just gonna do this external rotation on the same side. And she has the external rotation passive range of motion from 0 to 84 degrees. So now I'm just gonna let the patient scoot over to the right side and doing the range of motion for the left side. So first, internal rotations. The patient has a passive range of motion on the left shoulder internal rotation is 0 to 84 degrees. And for the left shoulder external rotation, the patient has the 0 to 82 degrees. And for shoulder external rotation, she has a close to 90 degrees range of motions on both sides, but still 50 degrees lesser than normal. So now we are doing the MMT for shoulder flexion for patient, And so before we start doing this, I asked for consent and she said yes. And also we need to do a general screen for shoulder flexion just to see whether the patient can score whether above 3 or below 3. And as we can see, the patient has pretty good range of motions. So that's why I'm choosing this sitting positions, which is against the gravity. And first, her left shoulder flexion has a pretty good, and they're all kind of strengths from light, moderate to hard. And so she have a score 5 out of 5 for the both left and right arms. And now we're doing the shoulder abduction, and we can see she's pretty good, have full range of motion for shoulder abduction. And now we're just performing the MMT. So 5 out of 5 on the left side, and 5 out of 5 on the right side. And next we're doing the shoulder external rotation and internal rotations. So general screening before we perform the MT to decide the positions. And first we're doing the shoulder external rotations. And as we can see, when I applied the light force, she didn't she could hold it, but after I applied more force, she couldn't hold it. So that's why I consider this is a 4 out of 5 on the both side for shoulder external rotation. And now the shoulder internal rotations. I want her to keep her arm as much close to the body as possible, and performing the MMT. So pretty similar as the shoulder external rotations, she scored 4 out of 5 on both sides. As continue, now we're starting to do the MT for serratus anterior. So now just for the general screen, I want her to raise her arms and protrude her arm like reaching toward the ceilings. So I'm performing the MT right now, and as we can see, she has a pretty good strength on the right side. And the same thing for the left side, she has a 4 out of 5 on the left side for serratus anterior. So now is the MT for middle trap. So she has a pretty good range of motions. So I'm performing the MT in this prone positions. As we can see, she can't tolerate any resistance, so that's why I give her 3 out of 5 on the both side for mid trap MT. So the next one is the lower trap. She has the full range of motion against the gravity, so that's gonna be above 3 or equals 3. So on the both sides, she scored 3 out of 5 for the MT of lower trap. Okay, so we are moving on to the flexibility test. So the first muscle is sub-occipital muscles. So the patient clearly state that she felt a very strong stress when performing this test, and also feel the strong end feeling. So she has a pretty tight suboccipital muscles on both sides. And now we're doing the levator scapula. So first stabilize the scapula and moving to the flexion positions. So to stretch it, control lateral side bending and control lateral rotations. And same, she has a pretty strong end feeling for both sides. And that's why I see she has the tight levator scapular muscle on both sides. And the next one is the scaling. And we are stabilizing the first rib. Scaling to stretch it, we should perform the contralateral side bending and ipsilateral rotations. And the same thing. She felt pretty tight, and I felt the tight ending feeling on both sides. So tight scaling muscles. Now we're moving on to the pike minor. So I put a towel at the inferior angle of the scapula just for the better stabilization. And I'm performing the test for pike minor muscles. And again, I feel pretty tight on the both sides of the pike minor. So pike major muscles. When the arm is horizontal, we are testing the sternal head. And when the arm is at a 45 scaption, this is the clavicular head. And for her pike major muscle, I didn't feel the tense, so she doesn't have a tight pike major muscle on the both sternal head and clavicular head. And lastly, we're going to do the latissimus dorsi. So I'm gonna stabilize the end attachment, which is the thoracolumbar fascia, and performing the test. So her latissimus dorsi muscle on the both sides are pretty good, so they're not tight.
I'm going to be holding this position for 30 seconds, making sure that the shoulder is down, and I can already feel a really good stretch here. So we're just going to hold that for 30 seconds. And then I would be repeating the same thing on the other side, extension, side bending. Oof, very tight. Okay, so that is one of my flexibility exercises. I'm supposed to be doing that 3 times a day or more, if I can remember, for at least 30-second holds. My next stretch that I'm going to be doing is for the pec minor. So we're going to be using the doorway for this. I'm just going to have my arm up here along with the orientation of the pec minor muscle, and then I'm just going to keep my body straight and press forwards. And again, I can already feel a really good stretch here just because of how tight that pec is. And same thing, we're going to be holding that for 30 seconds, repeating on the other side, performing that for 3 times a day as well. Moving on to my strengthening exercises, I'm going to be laying prone on the floor. I'm targeting the lower trap for this. So this is a great start for me because I have common dominance of my upper trap. So in this position, being prone with my arms up at this angle, we're targeting really just the low trap. And you can see while I'm doing this that I have a lot of difficulty getting as much motion as I really should be, especially on the left. And I was told to do this exercise like 20 times a row
like 3 times a day as well, targeting those type 1 and 2 muscle fibers until I can get a little more strengthening there. So then on my right side, it's a little bit better. But yeah, so we're gonna start by just building up some like tolerance for endurance, and then switch to type 2 muscle fibers where I would be adding some weight and hopefully being able to get that full range of motion. My next exercise that I'm gonna be doing for strength, again, is using them all. I'm gonna be doing isometrics, targeting the rotator cuff. So I'm keeping my arm in by my side, and I'm gonna be pressing my weight using my shoulder forwards, holding for 6 seconds. So 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And relaxing and repeating that. And we're gonna be doing a high number of reps for that, so 20 times, 3 times a day. Going for extension, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And I'm making sure that I have my shoulders hopefully in the best posture I can be in. Then we're doing external rotation, pressing out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And as I dance around the wall over here, we're doing internal rotation, holding for, remembering to set my scapula, and holding for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So hopefully by strengthening the
Okay, starting with Kate's lower body screen, the first thing I notice is that both feet are pronated. She has that dropped medial arch. It's definitely greater on the left foot than it is on the right foot. We might assume that she has some calcaneal eversion going on, and that there could be some tight plantar flexors and like the fibularis longus and brevis and tight gastroc-soleus complex. Moving up the chain, you can see that her femur and knee are slightly internally rotated, and I can confirm that by finding her tib tooth and then finding her patella, and you can see that that patella is slightly medial. So that might be caused by tight internal rotators, tight adductors, tight TFL. Moving up the chain, I'll have you face that way for me. We see that Kate has a slight anterior pelvic tilt. I can verify that by finding her PSIS back here, and then can I lift up this arm? Thank you. And then her ASIS here. You can see that that ASIS is slightly inferior to where the PSIS is. We might assume that she has tight lats that are contributing to this and tight hip flexors. And you don't really see much knee pathology going down, looking down the chain in terms of Jenny Reckerbottom. Can I have you face the back wall? Thank you. What we can see here is that her popliteal fossas are not exactly even. This one is slightly more lateral than this one, and it's also sitting slightly higher. Once again, you can really see here how her calcaneal tendon is not running in a straight vertical line. It does go more medially. So once again, we can assume that she might have some tightness down the back of the leg and in the side of the leg. And then moving up the chain, looking at the gluteal folds, they are pretty even. So we can assume that there's no strength imbalance in the glutes. And then in terms of the hips, I can just find her iliac crest, the top here, and we see that she is even. So she has level hips. QL is probably nice and straight, relaxed.
Action. Okay, so here in this anterior view, we can see a little bit of foot eversion. That could be due to an impaired superior lateral glide of the talus on the calcaneus. We also see a little bit of knee valgus, which could be causing the foot eversion. We do see some internal rotation of the femurs. That could be due to tight adductors or internal rotators. I'm gonna have you move into this actual view. Here we also see a little bit of a butt wink, but it is within normal limits and it's at the end of our movement here. We also see that she's not able to maintain an overhead position here, which could be due to impaired posterior glide at the GH joint. All right, so we're gonna do a dermatome screen of the lower quarter. I'm gonna have you close your eyes. I'm going to touch both sides of your body and I want you to let me know if the sides differ in feeling, okay? All right, so we've got L1 here.
Same.
L2.
Same.
L3.
Same.
L4.
Same.
L5.
Same.
S1.
Same.
And S2.
Same.
Awesome. All right, we're gonna be doing a myotome assessment. We're gonna do the left leg and then we will do the right leg. All right, I'm gonna have you bring your leg up. All right, we're testing L2 here, hip flexion, straighten the leg. L3, knee extension. L4, dorsiflexion. L5, toe extension. And S1, plantar flexion. All right, now we are doing the myotome testing of the right leg. Lift this up. L2, hip flexion. L3, knee extension. L4, dorsiflexion. L5, toe extension. And S1, plantar flexion.
And Kate, can I have you bend your knee into your chest? And then I'm just gonna give you a little bit of overpressure if that's okay. That makes more sense. The patient has 0 to 130 degrees of hip flexion range of motion, which is a little bit above the normal limits for hip flexion. Okay, Kate, can I have you bend your knee into your chest? And then I am going to give you a little bit of overpressure, if that's okay. Sure. So here on this side, the patient has 0 to 118 degrees of hip flexion range of motion, which is quite the difference from the other side. Ready? And you can lift her up. So she's got. Patient has 0 to 16 degrees of hip extension range of motion.
Good. Okay, and go.
So here the patient is showing 0 to 18 degrees of hip extension, which is pretty similar to what we saw on the other side.
Oh.
Patient is showing 0 to 31 degrees of hip abduction range of motion, which is below the normal limits. Patient is showing 0 to 38 degrees of hip abduction range of motion, which is greater than the other side, but still just out of those normal limits.
Oh.
So here with a deduction, the patient is showing 0 to 29 degrees of a deduction, which is within the normal limits. here the patient is showing 0 to 29 degrees of passive range of motion of adduction, which is within the normal limits and just about the same as the other side. So here the patient is showing 0 to 40 degrees of hip external rotation and internal rotation. Relax. Yeah. The patient has 0 to 42 degrees of hip internal rotation. Here the patient is showing 0 to 41 degrees of hip external rotation. And the patient is showing, relax. The patient has 0 to 40 degrees of hip internal rotation.
Go.
Okay, so here the patient is exhibiting 0 degrees of knee extension, and then I'm just going to take you up into flexion here. Really relax. Move you. And here the patient is showing 0 to 142 degrees of knee flexion.
Go.
Okay, so here the patient is exhibiting 0 degrees of knee extension, and then I'm just going to take you up into knee flexion here, Kate. And just push you a little bit further. And this side, the patient has 0 to 145 degrees of knee flexion, which is pretty close to what she had on the other side.
Go.
Okay, can I be flexed up towards the ceiling? Very good. I'm just going to apply a little bit of overpressure, even though you didn't go anywhere. So patient has 0 to 10 degrees of dorsiflexion range of motion, and then can I have you return to that neutral position? Good. And then can I have you point your toes down towards the floor? And here the patient has 0 to 50 degrees of plantar flexion.
Go.
Can I have you point your toes up towards the ceiling? Very good. And then I'm just gonna apply a little bit of overpressure. Good. On this ankle, patient shows 0 to 11 degrees of dorsiflexion, and then can I have you point the toes down to the ground? And here the patient is showing 0 to 54 degrees of plantar flexion.
Action.
Okay, so we are going to perform MMT for hip extensors here. I'm going to have you bring the leg up. All right, so I'm applying maximal resistance here, and she is able to resist. I would give her a grade of 5 out of 5. Relax. All right, and you're going to bring the leg up here. I'm applying maximal resistance as well here, and I would give her a grade of 5 out of 5.
Action.
Okay, so we are doing the other leg for MMT for hip extension. I'm gonna have you raise this leg here, resist me. All right, I'm applying maximal resistance. I would give her a grade of 5 out of 5. Bend this up here, don't let me push you down. And I'm applying maximal resistance as well, and she is able to resist me, grade of 5 out of 5.
Action.
Okay, we are performing MMT for the hip abductors. I'm gonna have you resist me, don't let me push you down. Hold, hold, hold. All right, I'm applying maximal resistance. I would give her a grade of 5 out of 5.
Then.
All right, we are performing MMT for the hip abductors on the right leg now. Okay, don't let me push you down. Hold, hold. All right, I'm applying maximal resistance and she's able to resist, so grade of 5 out of 5. Okay, we are performing MMT for the knee flexors. All right, I'm gonna resist you, don't let me push you. Hold. All right, I'm applying maximal resistance, so I would give her a grade of 5 out of 5.
Action.
Okay, we are now doing the left leg knee flexors. Okay, I'm gonna resist, don't let me push you down. Hold. All right, I applied maximal resistance, so I would give her a grade of 5 out of 5 as well.
Can I have you bring both knees up into your chest? Yep. And then we're gonna rock down. Oh, my arm. And then can I have you hold this knee into your chest?
Sure.
And then we're just gonna let this knee come down to the table. Okay, and here the patient's thigh is able to touch the table while the knee is bent, so she would have a negative Thomas test for both psoas and rectum on this side. Bring this leg up. Bring this leg down. Same thing on this side. Thigh touches the table, so that would be a negative Thomas test for the psoas and rectum.
Go.
So we're gonna test the muscle length of Kate's hamstrings. We're gonna first do the proximal attachment by doing the straight leg raise. So I'm just gonna bring this leg up. And there is no movement here at the pelvis by the time that we reach 70 degrees, so we know that that one's negative. And then we're also gonna do the distal attachment with the 90-90. So we're gonna bring the hip to 90 degrees of flexion, knee to 90 degrees of flexion, and then we're just gonna extend here. And we don't feel any tension until about here, which is normal, so that would also be negative. For that, let's just do the other leg while we're here. And relax as we go up. That is negative for the single leg raise, and then let's go into the 90-90 for the distal attachment. Go up. And that would also be within the normal limits. So that would be negative.
Go.
Okay, so here we're going to test the length of Kate's gastroc soleus complex. So I'm just going to have her go into some dorsiflexion here. And I know that this is not a tight muscle for her because she gets nearly about the same amount of range of motion that she had when we measured her dorsiflexion with the goni before when her knee was flexed. So I'm just going to have you bend this leg out of the way. And then we'll just check out this foot. Flex. Good, same thing here. She gets just about the same amount of range of motion that she had before when we measured it with the goni, just this time with the knee extended, so that would not be tight for her.
In this first exercise, I'm doing lateral side steps with a medium weight TheraBand. In this exercise, we are looking to concentrically and eccentrically strengthen the glute med and min. Since glute med and min are a type 1 fiber, the dosage for this exercise is 3 to 5 sets with 12 to 15 reps on each leg. This exercise is how we would progress the lateral side steps. I'm still doing a lateral side step with a medium weight TheraBand, but instead of it being around my thighs, it is now down by my ankles. Since the glute med and min are a type 1 fiber, the dosage for this exercise is 3 to 5 sets with 12 to 15 reps on each leg. This exercise is how we would regress the lateral side steps. I'm still doing lateral side steps, but without the resistance weight from the TheraBand. Since glute med and min are a type 1 fiber, the dosage for this exercise is 3 to 5 sets with 12 to 15 reps on each leg. Here we are stretching the adductors. The stretch is being held for a minimum of 30 seconds, and the stretch is being done for a minimum of 3 sets. We are progressing the adductor stretch by having the patient apply overpressure onto their knees so the stretch is a bit deeper. The stretch is being held for a minimum of 30 seconds and the stretch is being done for a minimum of 3 sets. We are regressing the adductor stretch by having the patient move their feet further in front of them. The stretch is being held for a minimum of 30 seconds and the stretch is being done for a minimum of 3 sets. Here we are doing toe raises to increase the strength of the tibialis anterior. There is a TheraBand around the patient's toes as the PT applies external resistance with their hands. We are having the patient do 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps. Here we have progressed the toe raises by having the patient do the exercise against gravity and against their body weight. We are having the patient do 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps. Here we have regressed the toe raises by eliminating gravity and any sort of resistance. We are having the patient do 2 to 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps. Here we are doing a gastroc stretch, making sure that the patient's back knee stays extended throughout the stretch. We have asked the patient to hold this stretch for a minimum of 30 seconds and do the stretch for 3 sets on both legs. Here we have progressed the gastroc stretch by adding a weight under the patient's toe so the patient can go into even deeper dorsiflexion. We have asked the patient to hold this stretch for a minimum of 30 seconds and do the stretch for 3 sets on both legs. Here we have regressed the gastroc stretch by moving the patient's legs closer together and eliminating the ability for them to go into deeper dorsiflexion. We have asked the patient to hold this stretch for a minimum of 30 seconds and do the stretch for 3 sets on both legs.